Hey guys, welcome to another weekly focus. So I have a couple of trades I'm currently holding, or I have a couple of trades I just got into for this week, and I had trades from last week as well. So I'm going to show you those trades. I'm going to show you the breakdowns and certain things. So let's just go straight and do, say, a quick trade recap. I'll show you the positions I had for last week. Some of those trades closed already. It didn't close properly, or it didn't close in the positive for me, and I'll show you as well, just trying to be transparent with everything and every time. So let me pull this up real quick. All right, so I'll start with the BTC one. So last week I remember telling you guys I had this trade idea on BTC, so I had the sales, and when I did the focus last week, I remember telling you guys I had to break even, and I moved my stops to break, and I moved my stops to secure some profits on this pair. So I had a break even at this point, which was right here, and then eventually I had the stops moved from the break even point to secure, say, about 1%, and this trade played out pretty good. So I think my trade management on this wasn't the best, and I only saw it after, because we had this run from the entry to here. We was running at about 3.5 or 3.7% at this point, and I didn't manage it properly. So I'm just using the structure that I'm looking at on higher time frames. So I have my stops moved to secure, say, 1%. If this comes up like this, so if we get this retracement or this pullback continuing to the upside, then it's going to stop me at 1%, and the management there wasn't the best. So but that's okay, and that's the difficult thing when you're dealing with, say, swing trades, because sometimes your positions can run for a lot of pips, or it can be in a lot of profits, and you just get this reversal coming back to take you out. Sometimes just break even or say 1%, that's fine. Okay, so let's look at the positions I'm in this week. So I'll start with NAS1. So if you remember from last week, I had this position on NAS100, and I closed it on, say, -2%, because I did an initial buy attempt here. It didn't go properly. I tried again the second time, it didn't go properly. So as of last week, I was down 2% on NAS, and it was the same thing on the S&P. So this week I got in on this buy position on September 11. So if you look at it right here, the buy attempt I was trying here, it didn't go through. We had this price stopped me out. Once I saw this inability around here, I saw this inability for prices to go down, inability for prices to go down. So just multiple times, and then I had my buys around here. So with this one, I actually got in really late, because the best spot for me to have taken the buys had to be around here. So I didn't get in early enough, and that's something again. So my positions are swing trades. If you look at the stop loss, it's pretty big, and that's because when I'm swing trading, it gives me enough time to hold trades during pullbacks, because when I get an entry like this, it's not the best entry, so I'm always expecting pullbacks to come in. So that's why I have a wider stop loss when you look at this. So it's the same thing with the S&P. So if you know the way I've been trading NAS and the S&P for me, so before it used to be NAS, S&P, and US30. So I always had trades on all these three pairs simultaneously, and I just risked, say, certain percentages on each one. So now it's NAS on the S&P for me. So I had a buy on the S&P as well. It's a mirror image. So what you've seen on S&P is the same thing that's happening on NAS. So I had this buy attempt here which failed. I was down 2%. I saw this inability, and I got in here. I got in late as well, so I wasn't on my decks when this took off. So the best spot for me for an entry was supposed to be around here, and I didn't get it, so I got in here. I have a wider stop loss again, just in case price had to pull back, so I can sit through the drawdown, because I'm swing trading this as well. So that's it for the positions I'm in this week, and I'll show you one position that didn't go properly for me, and that one was, I think this was gold. Yeah, so let's look at this. So we have gold. I remember telling you guys I had a buy position on gold. So I had this, I had a sell position on gold. So I had these sells right here, and prices just took me out, and when I looked at it later on and I did the how do you call this thing, not the back test, when I did a trade review on this one, like the post analysis thing. So I did a post analysis and I realized there were certain things I could have done better to spot these buys, but again, that's just part of the game. So I took a loss on gold and the buys just went off crazily, and that was a good one for those who attempted the buys on gold. Man, that was nice because that thing took off like really explosively. All right, so that's it for this week. So I've shown you the trade I'm in on. I have a trade on NAS, I have a trade on the S&P. I'm still holding my positions on BTC for this sales. If it takes me out, that will be say 1%. It's good as well because I'm trading this on a bigger account as well, so that's fine. So I'm going to show you guys the stocks we have for this week, or next week. So let's start with the DXY, the first thing we look at every single time, and I'll start with the daily time frame. That's the highest time frame I look at, so I'm just going to expand this and zoom in on the DXY. So first, I'll just show you something really quick. We have this trend line on the DXY. So when you look at the DXY from the daily time frame, two principles. The first one is just the trend, and the second one is the psychological levels or the psychological numbers. So let's go first of all with the trend. So we had this move to the downside, we had a pullback. We had this move to the downside, we had a pullback. We had this move to the downside, we had a pullback. And we had this move to the downside, we had this inability around 101, and I was expecting prices to continue to the upside, which it did, but it didn't go past 102. And once these buys started coming in, I was looking for sells on positions like gold, and I was expecting the indices to drop a little further. So US30, S&P and NAS, I was expecting those pairs to drop again, and it didn't happen. So once we had this inability for prices to test 102, and you can look at it right here, we had an inability to take out this level. We had these drops coming in, so I knew an inability for prices to go above this point, then we should see a drop coming into 101, and that's when I took the buy positions on NAS and I took the buys on the S&P. So if you just wonder why I took those buys, that's a reason. So now that we have this out of the way, so let's continue with the analysis real quick. So this trend line is up for me, so you can look at it without the trend line. You had prices moving to the downside, you had a pullback, an impulsive move, you had a pullback as well. We had an impulsive move, we had a pullback. So once we had this pullback, just going off of what's been happening, every time you have a pullback, you had this area taken out, and so we had this pullback right here, and we had an inability to take out this lows. So seeing this already, I knew at some point we should expect a reversal to come in terms of buys on the DXY. So now we had this other attempt. So we had this, there was an inability right here, we had buyers coming in, inability to take out this area, and then we had sellers dropping in. So what it's forming right here, personally, it looks like a range, and when you trade in ranges, you want to buy at the bottom of the range and take it to the top of the range. So you're looking for something like this to take it to an area like this, and this is me just going over what's happening on the daily time frame. So I'll clean this real quick and I'll show you. I'm just going to zoom in on this piece of price action right here, and then I'll use the psychological levers to help me anticipate the next move as well. So looking at this, as I said, it looks like a range right here. So if you're expecting buys from this point, you should see buyers coming in to test this part of the range, this upper part, and there's also a possibility for prices to go back to 102. So why am I expecting prices to go to 102? What am I looking for? So what's my thought process coming into next week? The first thing is, because the trend that was moving to the downside has been taken out, we had this inability right here. I'm not using the trend at this point, so the only thing that makes sense to me on the daily time frame is just the psychological levels. So what levels am I working with? So I'm working with 101 right now, and I still have 102. So these two levels are the most important levels for me coming into next week. So if we have an inability at this point, so if we have an inability right here at say 101, and it's difficult for prices to go through 101, the next level I'm looking at has to be 102. And that's just how I look at psychological levels. I look at psychological levels, or I look at price moving to one psychological level. I look at the reaction that happens at that psychological level, and if there's an inability for price to go through a psych level, then I should expect prices to move to the upside. Now before we expect prices to move to the upside, I'm just going to show you what I was looking at as well. So once we had these sales coming in, and this is still on the daily time frame, once we had these sales coming in, I knew an area like this could get tested. You have these lows and you have these lows as well. So these are the areas I was watching out for. I had these areas I was looking out for possible sales to those areas. So I was looking at areas like this, but once the sales came in, and this is still playing out currently, so I can't really say the sales are over right now, but I'll show you what I'm looking at in case this has to reverse and go to the upside. So once the sales came in, this was an area I was really looking at, and these lows as well, to see if sellers can attempt to take out these levels as well. And right now we're trading on this psychological level of 101. So if we trade on this psychological level of 101, there's certain possibilities, or there's certain things that can happen. So price can bounce off of this 101 level. So let's say sellers find it difficult to go through 101, and you just see that difficulty at this point. The first thing that can happen is we see prices moving back to the upside. That's one possibility. Now if this doesn't happen, there's a possibility sellers can still move to the downside, and I know we're sitting above 101, but there's still a possibility because the daily time frame has not shown me an inability to move to the downside. So now we have this daily candle. That's a massive candle. This is another daily candle which hasn't closed. It's going to close in about 4 hours 35 minutes. So this hasn't closed yet, so this can still close to the downside. It's a possibility. Or coming into next week, once the markets open say Monday and stuff like that, you could see another possibility with say this moving to the downside before, and just giving you this inability. So there's still a lot that I'm looking at in terms of the sales. I can't just say the sales are over right now, because the reaction at this psychological level hasn't shown me the inability for sellers to move to the downside, and that's me just looking at it from the daily time frame. So if we had say a move to 101, we'll get a reaction and an inability. So something like this, if I see something like this, then it becomes very easy for me to say price is moving to the upside, and at that point I'm going to target say 102 easily. And that's why I'm just a little bit skeptical with the move on the DXY, because of what I'm seeing. So again, there's a possibility for prices to move to the upside, but how far is this going to move to? That's what's difficult. So I'm really going to wait and see what's going to happen, because price can move up. That can be say a pullback, and then you see prices stepping again to the downside to take out this area and to take out this area before price starts moving to the upside. Now if this doesn't happen, then we could see price hovering around this area, getting a test around this area. And on lower time frames, you'll see this happening very easily. So maybe on the hourly time frame or the 4-hour time frame, you'll see price testing this area, and then you should expect prices to move to the upside. So when it comes to the DXY as of now, because of this range movement right here, it's quite difficult, and that's what happens when price is ranging. It's always difficult for you to tell what direction this is going to break out to, because this can break out to the downside and you get a test of this area and you get a continuation which sells to the downside. And if you trade this as a range again, you can argue that it's possible that price stays at 101, which is this strong psychological level. If price stays at this level, then you could expect prices to move to the upside as well. So it's just a lot that can happen when price is ranging. So if price is ranging, it's always difficult for you to anticipate perfectly. So right now, this is what I'm looking at. There's just still this possibility for these sellers to come in one more time to the downside, and this can come in different ways. You get a move to the upside, there's a pullback, and then you get a drop. If that doesn't happen, you get a move to the upside, you get a pullback to this psychological level of 101. You get that inability for prices to go through this point, and you see prices moving to the upside. So that's what I'm looking at on the DXY. So let's look at the 8-hour time frame, and let's see what's happening on this time frame. So the only thing that's imminent right now is the range. Sorry, I have a bad voice. So the only thing that really looks easy to spot right now, you have price moving to the upside, price moving to the downside, moving to the upside, moving to the downside. So if this area keeps holding, so if we find it difficult for sellers to move through 101, then we should expect prices to move again to the upside. So just going off of psychological levels, that's easy and that's straightforward as well. And I'll look at this on the 4-hour time frame. I'll look at this on the hourly time frame as well, just to see if there's anything we can pick from this. Now when you look at a move like this, you had sellers coming in, it tells you eventually we should have the DXY moving to the upside. So how far of a move to the upside are we going to get? That's what makes it very difficult. So we had this move coming to the downside, we had a pullback expecting this to continue. That was a fail. We've had buyers stepping in, we're also expecting this to take out an area like this. We had a fail. So you see, so right now it's just a struggle between the buyers and the sellers. So if we take this, let me clean this and show you something. So if we focus on an area like this, now this is very interesting. You have buyers coming in at this point of 101, and we have sellers coming in at this point of 102. So there is a fight right now. So I'm still expecting buyers to put in another fight right here to take prices to the upside. So if these buyers try taking prices to the upside and the sellers come in again, then we could see these areas tested. That's what I was explaining on the daily time frame, and we could see areas like this tested. So now if the buyers have a lot of strength and they have like this momentum to take prices to the upside, then you could treat this as a range and you expect prices to continue to the upside to test an area like this. And if it goes above this like impulsively, the next area for me is 102. So let me show you something. When you're looking at a trend, so for example, if you have a downtrend, and you see price slowing down like this, it's always an indication that there's a move coming in to the upside. And if you have price moving to the upside as well, and you get a slowdown like this, most often it's like an indication that price is going to drop to the downside. So this is really what I'm looking at, and a lot can happen and you just get prices tanking again to the downside. But for now, I'll trade this as a range that's forming in right here. I'm looking at 101 level and I'm looking at the 102 level. So I want to see how far these buyers are going to come in. I want to see the reaction from the sellers, and I want to see the reaction again from the buyers. So that's what I'm looking at. If the sellers have a lot of momentum coming in, we can take out an area like this. So those are all possibilities as well. So right now I'm just looking at this range, and I will trade it as a range right now, but we're playing from 101, which is a psychological level, and the next level I'm looking at is 102. So I'll step down to the hourly real quick. Same thing on the hourly, you just have more price action, and now you have a reaction around this 101 level. So there's a lot that's telling me. So when you look at this, so you had this move right here to the 101 level, you had sellers coming in making lows, making lows, making lows. Then you had this impulsive reaction from the buyers. Now it's a little bit different this time. We've not had the impulsive move from the buyers. We had sellers coming in. There was a low, there was a low, a shallow low right here, and then you had buyers stepping in. So I really want to see the reaction of the sellers. So My focus right now is, when you look at this move on the hourly time frame, we're coming off of a sell to the 101 psychological level. So the only way I'm going to say this is not selling is if we get an attempt again from the sellers and we find it difficult to go through an area like this, then I'll expect buyers to step in one more time. So that's what I'm looking at, and that's why I always tell you guys, when you look at psychological levels, watch the reaction around these levels, and because the reaction around these levels tells you a lot, and that's what I pay attention to. I pay attention to the reaction around these levels. So you see price moving here, coming back, the reaction around this level tells you a lot. The reaction around this level tells you a lot. So I'm looking at the reaction around this level, and it could be an indication for us to see prices moving to the upside. But then I need to see the sellers coming back. So just as an example, I'm looking at this. You had this reaction right here from the buyers, reaction from the sellers, inability, prices move to the upside. So I'm looking for something similar at this area right now, just to give me that indication. So there's still a possibility we can have prices moving to the upside on the DXY. So this is a possibility for this move to the upside, and there's also a possibility for a continuation to the downside. So now that's it for me on the DXY. We're actually ranging right now, trading between 102, 101. There's high chances we can see buyers stepping in, and I'll use this to look at other pairs. So if these buyers start coming in, we should expect a lot of pullbacks on the pairs that we had buys on for this week, say the NAS, S&P and stuff like that. And we should expect sales on certain pairs, and I'll show you there's one pair I think we might have sales if these buyers come in impulsively. So let's start with US30. Alright, cool. So the US30 actually is the pair I'm looking for possible sales if those buyers come in impulsive on the DXY. So I'm going to show you why. So the first thing, I'll just look at the daily time frame, and there's no trend you can look at right now. So if you zoom out, you probably see certain trends you can work with, like this. If you zoom out, you see trends you can work with, and you can tell, oh, price is moving to the upside. That's correct. But when I do my focus and when I'm trading, I try to focus on the immediate price action. So the simple question I like asking myself is, when you look at this move, you could tell there was a trend in here. Price was moving to the upside, price was moving to the upside. So here we had a trend, but since this got violated and everything, we've not really had a trend on this pair. So we just had on the daily time frame. So don't misquote this, or don't misquote me. On the daily time frame on US30, this right here, there wasn't any trend I could work with once these sales came in. Now once these buys came in, this is a higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low. This was a trend to work with, so you could buy as these pullbacks were coming in. So these are the pullbacks, you could look for buys, pullbacks for buys, pullbacks, you look for buys here. This was probably taking you out as a loss. So let's make this easy then. On the daily time frame, this was the last trend I could work with. So with this trend taken out, there is no trend I can see on the daily time frame like here. There's no trend right here. So the only thing I can go off of is just psychological levels. So now what levels am I playing with? I'm currently playing with, say, 41,000 and 42,000. So if price goes through one psychological level, most often, like 90% of the time, you should expect prices to come back and test this level of 41,000, wait for the reaction around 41,000, and then you make a decision. So if price keeps holding around this point, the next area we're headed to has to be 42,000. So right now, looking at this from the daily time frame, this is a quick question for me. So we had prices going through 41,000, and this was a high right here. So there has to be a question mark for me. So if prices go through 41,000, the question mark is, how will price react when it gets to an area like this? We've approached this area like pretty close, but we haven't taken out this area. So that's a high right there. we haven't taken out this to make new highs. So looking at this, we haven't taken out this area to make new highs, and this can change coming into next week. So coming into next week, you could have a candle that opens like this, you get a slight pullback, and you see price putting in something like this. It's very possible. But just going off of what I'm looking at right now, if I need to get involved in a position like this on US30, I don't want to get in on buys at this point, because I'll be getting the worst price. So if you're trading from one cycle level to another cycle level, you want to get your buys as close to this level as possible, so you can take it to this one. Now this gives you a better risk to reward, and it just makes it easy, because it tells you if sellers come in again to test this area of 41,000 and they find it difficult, then the next area I'm looking at is 42,000, which is very simple. It's a principle I use all the time. So let's see this on, we'll probably head to other time frames, but just going over what's happening on the daily time frame, we've gone through 41,000 like this. We went through 41,000. There's a possibility for prices to continue moving to the upside, but for me to get involved in a position like this, I need a pullback to come in. So if we can get a pullback to come in to test 41,000, and trust me, this pullback can come in lower than 41,000, but first of all, we need to see how price tests 41,000 for me to get buys again. And if it comes in lower than 41,000, it even makes it sweeter for me, because it just gives me a better price to buy again. And once to buy, I'll start managing this accordingly and looking at 41,000 to probably break even, take some positions out, and then I'm looking at 42,000 as the next level to take prices to. So without a doubt on US30, price is still moving to the upside. But just going off of what's happening on the DXY, for this possibilities for price to move to the upside, the pair I'm looking at for sales is US30, and I'm looking for sales for US30 to test an area like this, and trust me, this can go lower than that to even test areas like this. So there's just other things I look at when I'm looking at levels and stuff like that, or potential areas where price can travel to. There's certain things I'm looking at, there's certain areas I'm looking at, there's certain levels I'm looking at. But going off of what's happening on the daily time frame, we had price moving through 41,000. For me to get involved, I need prices to step back to 41,000, and I need to get this confirmation that sellers are not going through 41,000. If sellers go through 41,000, it's a pause for me. I have to pause and wait and see how far the sellers want to go to with this move, so it can take out even areas like this and even come back to test 40,000. So those are all possibilities, and that's why I say when you look at cycle levels, you're not just looking at cycle levels, you need setups, like you need your setups as well, and you start using the setups, combining them with the cycle level. So let's look at this on the 8-hour time frame, and I'll show you certain things. So on the 8-hour time frame, on this for me, I tell you, if price finds it difficult to go through this area right here, if we have this inability to go through this area, then I'm looking for sales. And this is it again, because this principle for me, I tell you, is very simple. If price goes through a cycle level, the next cycle level has to get tested, or at least come close to that level. So if we go through 41,000, the next level I'm looking at is 42,000. But if for certain reasons price starts its move above a cycle level, so price starts moving above 41,000, and then we find it difficult for prices to go above, or for prices to take out this high. So what it's telling me is, if you had sellers stepping in here making this move, you've had buyers coming in above 41,000, and you should expect the next psychological level to get tested, which is 42,000. If this doesn't happen, for some reason, it's just telling me sellers are still interested in this. So it's not a good time for me to buy, and it's instead a good time for me to sell, and then wait for the buys to resume again. So if this happens, I'll wait for this. I just want to see this failing. So if we cannot go through this area right here, then the next level we're testing again has to be this area of 41,000. So if we find it difficult to go through this point, we should test 41,000. We'll wait for the reaction around 41,000. If we have an inability to go through 41,000, then these buys can resume again. And however, if we go through 41,000 to the downside, we can get a test of this, and we continue selling this to the next psychological level, which is 40,000. So that's what I'm looking at on US30, and we can drop this to lower time frames. It's just going to be the same story but with more price action and then more reactions around the psychological levels. So let's look at, say, the 4-hour time frame. So on the 4-hour time frame now, as we step to lower time frames progressively, what I look for on lower time frame is just the trend that is building up. So if you look at this on the 8-hour time frame, this is the piece of price action I'm really paying attention to. So how are these guys buying? Yes, we had this impulsive buy coming in here. We had a test of 40,000 and we had buyers stepping in. So when we step down to lower time frames, I'm looking for a trend on these lower time frames to see how price is moving to the upside, because if I can identify a trend on lower time frames from this side level going to the upside, once we have a breach of that or a fail on that trend, I should expect sellers coming in to test an area like this. So it's just the same principle, combining trends or trend lines and psychological levels. So looking at this on the 8-hour time frame, it's quite difficult to spot any trend that's building up, but I can look at this on the 4-hour time frame and the hourly time frame. So on the 4-hour time frame, it's not seen clearly, but you have this move, there's a pullback, you have a move, there's a slight pullback and a move. So I can look at this on the hourly time frame then, and I believe there should be a trend that I can work with. So something like this. So this is a trend I'm looking at on US30 on the hourly time frame. So if this trend maintains, so you see you have this area is taken out, you have this, there's a move to the upside. If price maintains this area, then we should take out these highs and see price moving again to the upside. And if for any reason the sellers decide to come in again, then you should see this area getting breached and you should expect sales to come in. The area for us to test has to be 41,000. If the sales are impulsive, we'll keep selling, so you start expecting moves like this to the downside, where price is making lows and lower lows and lower highs and stuff like that. So this is what I'm looking at on US30. So there's still a possibility for these buys to continue, that if you look at the DXY, and this moves up, you get a test of 101 and a drop, then you should expect US30 to continue moving to the upside. But if this area holds, say 101, then you should expect prices to move to the upside on the DXY, and I'll be looking for sales on US30. So that's what I'm looking at on US30. It's quite easy, it's quite straightforward. Now when we look at, say, let's analyze another pair. Let's look at NAS. So looking at NAS, now this looks completely different to US30, but it looks really similar to the S&P. So on the daily time frame, again, the first thing I'm looking at is recent price action. You can look at this, you can look at this. I'll just focus on this one, recent price action. There's no trend line I can use at this point, so the only thing I can use is psychological levels right now. So looking at this on the daily time frame, price went through 19,000. I have my buys in on this already, and I'm looking at an area like 20,000. So honestly, the buys I have on NAS100, which is currently running, I'm actually aiming for an area like this, and that's what I told you, it's actually a swing position for me. That's an area I'm looking at. This high is right here. So I have this buys on NAS100, and I'm looking at an area like this. Now this is going to come in with a lot of pullbacks, and that's why I have my stop loss. I think I have my stop loss like really low. I think it should be here or here. I have my stop loss around there. So we could expect pullbacks to come in, and this is probably going to pull back to my entry point, which is like a break even. You can expect something like this, and then it move to the upside to test 20,000 get a pullback, and then you see prices moving again to the upside, then giving you a trend to work with. So every pullback that comes in is an opportunity for us to scale in. So just going over what's happening on the daily. So forget the area I'm targeting right now. Let's do this analysis real quick. So going over what's happening on the daily time frame, we had this area of 19,000. So we had price going through 19,000, an impulsive reaction from the buyers to take prices above 19,000. So when prices go through a level, you should expect a test of that level. It doesn't happen all the time, but the reason I always wait for this test right here is because it tells me if the sellers cannot take prices below 19,000, this looks like a correction, it looks like a pullback, and it gives me another possibility to buy to the upside. And it just makes it easier because once these buys came in, I'm not looking for buys at this point. I want a price that is like a discounted price, so I'm expecting something like this or something lower for me to take buys in on this pairs again. So that's what I'm looking on US30 from the daily time frame. I'm just going off of one psychological level to the next psychological level. So 19,000 is the level we went through. The next level we can get to is 20,000. So looking at this, am I interested in trading NAS100 next week if I get a pullback? For sure. And the reason is we still have a lot of room. I think we've just done 50% of this range. So from 19,000 to 20,000, we're currently around 19,500. So we've just done 50% of this move. So we still have 50% to play to the upside. So if we get a pullback, that's just a discounted price, and we still have a lot to play with. So let's look at this, say from lower time frames. Is there anything that makes sense to me? So when I look at this recent price action on the daily time frame, there's no trend line to work with, and there's no trend because it's very easy for you to take trades when the market is trending and you're just waiting for pullback so you can buy in that direction. So if we look at this on the 8-hour time frame, so this is what I'm looking at. You have price moving up, there's a pullback. You have price moving up, there's a shallow pullback right here. And I think this is going to make more sense on the 4-hour time frame and the hourly time frame. So the same thing I was looking at on the daily time frame, we went through this 19,000. We went through 19,000. So these are the possibilities right now. We could see prices coming back down. This is the 8-hour time frame. We could see prices coming back down to test 19,000. And if the sales are impulsive, you could see prices even moving lower. That's a possibility, and I'll show you how to spot this on lower time frames as well. So that's one possibility. You get prices coming back down to test this area so we can take buys, or you see prices coming in lower, you get that inability, and then you look for buys again. Get to an area like this, you break even, take partials and stuff like that, and you target say 20,000, or you go for this overall move, an area like this. So those are the possibilities I'm looking at on NAS100. So that's the 8-hour time frame. And I told you, now as you start stepping down to lower time frames, in as much as I'm expecting prices to come to this area, I need to look at other time frames and see if there's a possibility for price to do something like that. So if I clean this real quick and we'll step down to like the 4-hour time frame, I'll do the 4-hour time frame. So what I'm looking for on these lower time frames is say a trend or a trend line. So if I put something like this, which is not the best trend line, but just to give you a visual representation, you have price pulling back to this area, you have price pulling back. So if price pulls back to an area like this, I'm still holding my buy positions on NAS100, and this is a simple reason I'm holding this position on NAS100, because I'm expecting pullbacks to come in to an area like this, and we see prices moving again to the upside. However, if this breaks out or we get a breach or a violation, you could see prices selling to test an area like 19,000, and I'm still expecting prices to buy off of 19,000. Or if the sellers come in impulsively, we could see it tanking from 19,000 to come in lower and even test areas like this. So these are all possibilities, and I'm very aware of these things, and I'll manage my positions accordingly. So I still have these positions open on NAS100 and I'm looking at it closely, just waiting for price to unfold and tell me what it's really trying to do. So I still have these positions open. We had this move to the upside, there's a pullback, there's a pullback. If we get a pullback to an area like this, we should expect prices moving to the upside. You get a violation, you expect prices to move to the downside. So that's what I'm looking at on NAS100. You can look at it on the hourly time frame as well. It makes sense on the hourly time frame. We still have a lot of room to play to the upside. We have a lot of room to play to the downside if sales start coming in. So looking at this on the hourly time frame, just as I told you guys, you had a pullback coming in, you have a pullback coming in, pullback coming in. We should expect pullbacks to come in. So once this pullback start coming in, I'm looking at it as well. So you look at this pullback, it's quite shallow. You have multiple candles coming in. You look at this, it's shallow as well. You have multiple candles. If we get a pullback that is very impulsive, it means it's going to take out this area. Once I see something like this, it means price is coming in for this area, and I have to manage the positions accordingly, because if price starts selling to an area like this, then we need to wait for the reaction at this area. Possibility is to buy or wait for that break, test. Possibility is to sell. So those are the things I'm looking at on NAS100. So overall, I still have my buyers on this to take prices to the upside. So, and this is the area I'm looking at, this area right here. So it's actually a massive move I'm playing with, and I'm not looking. So if you're trading, say, intraday and you're scalping, you can see a lot of good opportunities to trade on this pair. So if you have, say, a break of this area right here, you can take those sales to an area like this. That's a lot you can play with on NAS. But if this holds at this level, then you can take this buys as well to areas like this. You have to look at the DXY and look out the direction the DXY is trying to play to. So going off of the fact that we still have this price ranging on the DXY, there's just about 80% or 90% chances or possibilities that this is going to move to the upside. So you should expect pullbacks on these other pairs, taking out these areas or taking out a trend like this, and possibilities for sales. If that doesn't happen, again, as I told you, I'll keep holding my buy positions on this pair, and then we'll see how far this can go. Now let's look at, say, the S&P 500. So the S&P 500, the same thing on the S&P 500. Now this is quite funny, because when you look at it and you look at NAS100, the S&P 500 is actually closer to its psychological level of 5,600 right here. So there's a very big possibility we could see prices pulling back to 5,600. Inability for buyers to hold above 5,600, and you see prices dropping, 5,500 getting tested, sellers again, and you could see areas like this getting tested. So these are all possibilities. So let's break this one step at a time. So is there any trend we can work with on the daily time frame? This is the most recent price action I'm looking at. There's no trend I can work with on the daily time frame as of now. So this was a trend taken out, completed already. You had a trend here. This trend wasn't like clear for me to work with and stuff like that. So right now on the daily time frame, there's no trend for me to work with. So going off of psychological levels, how can I approach a pair like the S&P 500? I'm just going to zoom in on this. So going off of psychological levels, what level are we playing with right now? We're currently sitting above 5,600. What the next level price can get to? It has to be 5,700. Now if price finds it difficult to take out an area like this, it means sellers are coming in, or sellers came in here because you saw this move to the downside. That was quite easy. If price finds it difficult to take out this area, which is the most recent high, going off of what's happening on the daily time frame, if price cannot take out an area like this, we find it difficult, it means sellers are still involved in this move right here, and we should expect prices to test this psychological level of 5,600. And if the sellers are still involved, as I said, from just going off of this, sellers coming in again, you could see prices trading below 5,600. getting a test of this, and you see prices moving to the downside. And remember guys, I have my positions open on the S&P 500, so logically I should be anticipating for the moves to go to the upside, so I should be looking for buys to the upside. But the most important thing, or what I like telling people, is when you have positions open on a pair, it's quite difficult to trade that pair, or it's quite difficult to focus on that pair, because you might get this bias, or you might be drawn to the initial bias you had. So when I took the buy position, I was expecting these highs to get taken out, and these highs haven't been taken out. Like, I was expecting these highs to get taken out, I think yesterday or early today. I was expecting these highs to get taken out. Now these highs have not been taken out, and that's a concern for me. So it's just telling me there's a possibility that sellers can come in. Now if sellers come in, and because we're trading above 5600, if these sellers come in and you get a move like this to the downside, then there's nothing stopping this thing from testing this area. You get a test at this area, and you see price dropping to 6500. So that's a very big possibility. Now if we get prices testing an area like this, you get a rejection, you could see buyers then moving prices to the upside. So it's always two sides to the coin, and it's just preparing yourself and then letting price show you what it's really trying to do. So I'll step down to the 8-hour time frame, and let's see. So back to the DXY. If this guy continues its move to the upside, you should expect sales on the S&P 500 as well. So looking at the S&P 500, the 8-hour time frame, we've had prices going through 5600. If we cannot take out this area, which is something I was looking at, then we should expect sales to come in. And it's quite funny because I have buys on this pair, S&P and NAS, and I'm still expecting sales to come in. And that's the beauty of it, because I'm doing a focus, and this helps me with my trade management as well. I'm not just looking at the possibilities for me to buy, I'm looking at possibilities for this to reverse and take me out or break even as well. And it's just going to give me a better entry to do certain things, or give me an opportunity to sell as well. So looking at this, we've gone through 5600. I need to see prices pulling back to 5600. If it goes to 5600 again and it steps down, I'll wait for prices to test, and that is it. I'm looking for sales again on this pair. So if we get a move here and it holds, I'm expecting prices to move all the way to 5700. If we do not get any pullback to 5600, I'm still expecting prices to test 5700, and that's why I still have my buys on the S&P. So you can look at this on the 4-hour time frame. I think the sales are coming in on the 4-hour time frame already, but this hasn't closed yet, so this can still close to the upside. It can close impulsively to the downside. But as I told you, when price goes through a psych number, I like seeing a test of that psych number to make a decision if price is going to hold and go to the upside, or you get a breach, a test of this, and you see prices moving to the next psychological level like this. So on the S&P 500, depending on what's going to happen on the DXY, I'm not going to be surprised if sales start coming in impulsively. I won't be surprised, because there's a high chance the DXY might buy because of what's been happening here. I explained this already. There's a range that's forming here. We're at the bottom of the range. You should expect buyers to step in as well. So those are the possibilities I'm looking at. So if this sales start coming in on the S&P 500, I won't be surprised, and I might actually look for selling opportunities. So that's something I'll consider coming into next week. So the markets are about to close in a couple of hours, so I'm not trying to sell today. I'll just wait and see what happens. And again, if this goes below this area, then that's a good opportunity for us. You have sales here. I'm just going to show you. You have your sales there, and if you target this area, you have something like this. This is a 1:2. If you go in at a test of this psychological number, you're looking at say 2.6, and sometimes it goes above. So this alone can give you say 1:3 if you time it properly. So you get those entries around here, and that's a 1:3. And if you just go conservative as well, That's 1:5 or 1:2.5. That's a lot. That's massive as well. So that's a good trade right there. So I'm just going to keep this. I'm going to keep this on the S&P. So possibilities coming into next week for these sales, and that's what I'm looking at, just because of what's happening on the DXY. So if you get these buys, you should get those sales on the S&P. So however, if the DXY decides to sell, which is not looking likely like right now, then we should get a continuation, or just pull back to an area like this or like this, and then you see prices moving to the upside. So those are all possibilities I'm looking at on the S&P. Now let's look at the last pair, which has to be gold. So I'm not going to stay on this. So looking at the daily time frame on gold, what do we see? We see price going to the upside, and I had this sales I was looking at here. Price took me out, so I didn't have any luck on this sales. So right now price stayed above this level, and this is something I like, and I've been explaining this on the other pairs. And when I saw this, I don't know, I was just blind enough to take this as a buy. So we had price coming through the psychological number of 2500. We had a reaction right here, buyers bringing prices up, sellers coming back, and this is the perfect move we're looking at. A move to this psychological level and a reaction from the buyers taking prices. So entries around here will have been perfect to take prices to the upside. So what psychological level am I looking at on gold right now? The next level price can get to is 2600. How is price going to get to 2600? Price can make a series of higher highs and higher lows to get you to 2600, or you get the next candle that opens, or the next daily candle, and you see prices moving to this area. If price gets to 2600, we'll wait for the reaction around this area, and you could see possible sales. So personally for gold, I'm still looking for prices to move to the upside, but I'm aware as well that the DXY has this potential to move to the upside. So this could give me pullbacks on gold. If we get pullbacks coming in on gold, we could expect something like this, and then we'll look for an opportunity again to buy. So this can pull back to say, like if we're trading between 2500 and 2600, so 50% of this area is somewhere around here. So you can get a pullback to an area like this, or even lower. That's still fine. So you still have enough room to buy if you see a buying possibility right there. So because this came in impulsive on the daily time frame, it might be difficult to see something, let's say, to see a trend on lower time frames. But what I can do as well is look for a trend on this daily time frame, because this tells me we can see a possibility of a trend. So let's do something like this. So if you look at this right here, so to get involved on gold, we could look for sales. So we could look for sales to an area like this, and then look for buys to the upside, or wait for this to get taken out, and we'll look for sales to the downside. So that's it on gold. And now this makes it really easy once you throw this trend line right here. So you had prices taking up this area, bouncing, taking out this area, taking out this area. So how do we get involved in a situation like this? You wait for prices to pull back to an area like this, and then you take prices to the upside to take out this area, and our next target has to be 2600. So these are the possibilities I'm looking at on gold. Just looking at it from the daily time frame, going off of psychological levels, going off of trend lines. So expect pullbacks to come in on gold, and if the pullbacks don't come in, then you expect prices to test 2600. So that's it on the daily. On the 8 hours is the same thing. So you had this area, price was moving, taking out this area, taking out this, taking out this. Expect prices to pull back, and for us to look for buying opportunities as well. So there's still a lot of room to 2600 if those prices can pull back decently enough for us to get another buy attempt on gold. So that's it. Let's look at the 4 hours. Now this area is what I'm focused on as we start moving to lower time frames. So that's the 4 hours and the hourly, but there's no trend on the 4 hours, so there's not a lot we can look at right here. And if you step down to the hourly as well, okay, this seems to be interesting. So let's do something like this. So on the hourly time frame, what I'm looking at right here, you have a move, there's a pullback, you have a move, there's a pullback, there's a move, and there's a pullback coming in. So now this can tell you certain things. So for example, there's a trend that is building up right here. Price is pulling back, price is pulling back. If this gets violated, we should expect sales to come in. As this sales start coming in, we need to watch out for what's happening on the daily time frame as well, because those sales could simply be pullbacks to an area like this, and for us to take out these highs. So that's what I'm looking at on gold. For us to have these pullbacks, we need to see these buys coming in on the DXY. If those buys come in on the DXY, we'll see this pullback. If price pulls back to an area like this and holds, you could see the DXY attempting these sales, and then I'll look for buys on gold to target an area like this. So those are just possibilities. So however, if the sales come in impulsively and we get a breach of this area, I'll just look for pullbacks and we'll start heading for sales, and that could be an indication that the DXY is headed to the upside to test an area like 102. So alright guys, I hope with this little explanation and this focus, it makes it easy for you to anticipate the moves coming into next week. And as usual guys, remember, you need to be patient with your analysis and stay consistent with everything you do. If you found this interesting, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. See you during the next one. Bye for now.